This is CBC Windsor News. I'm Chris Ensign. Katarina is away tonight. Canada has a new Prime Minister. Mark Carney and a somewhat smaller cabinet have been sworn in. And as CBC's David Thurton reports, Carney's promising action from day one.
Prime Minister Mark Carney arriving at Rideau Hall, ready to usher in a new political era.
That I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Just days after becoming Liberal leader, Carney isn't wasting time filling his cabinet with mostly familiar faces. François-Philippe Champagne is finance minister. Key ministers in the tariff war, Jonathan Wilkinson and David McGuinty, keep their old jobs along with Melanie Joly away at G7 meetings, while Dominic LeBlanc now focuses on the relationship with the U.S. and premiers.
We have new ministers with new ideas, ready to respond to new threats and to seize new opportunities.
Carney's team is smaller, 24 ministers instead of 37, fewer women than men. Immediately confronting the new cabinet, a trade war and U.S. annexation threats.
We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, be part of the United States. America is not Canada.
After the formalities, it was straight to work.
I have already met with my deputy minister at ISED, and I have instructed him to prepare a letter that will be going to our suppliers to buy Canadian.
It is a privilege to serve in cabinet. Right now, all of us need to be focused on helping our new Prime Minister Carney, lead our country.
On his first day, the new PM did need help.
Sir, I want to go over here.
On the way to his first cabinet meeting.
Okay.
See, before I have to get, I'm lost. Just pale too.
What are your first priorities?
First priorities, we're going to deal with the carbon tax.
The Conservative leader cast doubt on that.
This is the carbon tax law. It's in place today. Until Parliament is recalled, this carbon tax law will be the law of the land.
While carbon pricing is still the law of the land, Carney signed an order ending the collection of the consumer levy.
We will be eliminating the Canada fuel charge, the consumer fuel charge, immediately.
It's unlikely that Parliament will be recalled to change the law. Sources say Carney will be triggering an election this month, sending Canadians to the polls either in late April or May. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
We asked MPs in Windsor, Essex what they make of the new Prime Minister. Conservative Chris Lewis in Essex wasn't available for an interview. Here's what the NDP and Liberal MPs had to say.
This is somebody who understands the economy better than anyone. He's somebody that has experience guiding countries and nations through crises. He did it with Canada, he did it with the UK, he did it with Ireland. And he's someone that's pragmatic. So for him, it's not about a show. For him, it's about results, and it's about outcomes, not output.
Open Parliament up so we can keep pushing the automotive file and go on the offense. And that doesn't mean just waiting around to retaliate on tariffs. What it means is domestic procurement, as I've been advocating for, with regards to the auto sector and as well as other sectors, manufacturing, telecom, lowering prices for consumers, making it more affordable for Canadians. So happy to get back and work with whoever in the House of Commons and at committees to make things more affordable for Canadians. So that should be the priority right now.
The power company that serves a large chunk of customers in the county will be sold to Enwin. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa on what customers want to see happen next.
An electricity supplier that residents in Essex County have complained about for years as being unreliable is being sold off.
Going forward, we will have more staffing resources available and more technology and more money being able to put into our utility system. Enwin has committed to really putting capital investments in right away, which is very much needed.
ELK Energy Inc. services 12,600 people in Essex, Lakeshore, and Kingsville areas. The town of Essex owned the company. It is now selling its shares to Enwin Utilities, a company that already provides energy to Windsor. ELK has had a tangled past between complaints from residents for flickers and full-on power outages to a $5,000 fine from the Ontario Electricity Board in 2022 for not keeping records of its inspections.
It was on and off. We all know the last couple of years it's been a bit spotty.
After dealing with the ups and downs, this restaurant owner says she hopes the switch to Enwyn will be better for business.
It was hard on sales when you knew that that day was happening or it has happened. It's like, okay, now what's a day going to be like? And you miss sales and the customers, you know, oh, I don't have power, say in Cottam, so now I'm here and then I didn't have it.
This resident remembers reading a book with a flashlight.
I've come from a small town, so I come from Chatham, Kent, and we didn't ever experience like power outages unless there was a storm or something. And so a lot of these were happening on like sunny days and not necessarily stormy days.
But she's hoping those days are gone.
So hopefully we'll get less power outages to no power outages.
Essex Mayor Sherry Bondi says she can't say how much the shares of the company are being sold for, as that's still being worked out. She says it will take 6 months to a year, and it still needs to be approved by the Ontario Energy Board. But she's confident that it will move forward. For now, she says that customers can still expect to receive bills from ELK and that amount should stay the same. Any money made from the sale, says Bondi, will go into investments for the town to use in the future. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Essex.
Colette Kennedy joins us now. The weather today makes you want to have that dog to go on the walk. I tell you, something special out there.
Yes, I'm sure you can borrow a dog too if you don't have one. Sometimes folks are happy to get a little bit of a break there. Yeah, gorgeous conditions, and then we have to turn to what's coming for the weekend, which we do have the special weather statement for the amount of rain, but also the strong and gusty winds. Some localized flooding will be a potential, or that possibility is there to be aware of. Overnight tonight, though, a mild one. 12 degrees late overnight, like think early tomorrow morning, 5, 6 a.m. showers, maybe even a few thunderstorms, then stronger winds, and we'll contend with some more of that rain coming on through, and I'll break it all down when I come back, Chris.
Yeah, quite the contrast. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The City of Windsor could get $28 million in federal funds to improve transit services. That money would start flowing next year, be spread out over the next 10 years. But there's a catch. City Council only gets the money if it agrees to increase housing density. The feds want Council to allow apartment buildings anywhere within 800 meters of colleges and universities, as well as along main transit lines. Here in Windsor, that would be the bus routes on Tecumseh Road and Wyandotte Street.
And so there are housing conditions that are attached to that because, again, strong, thriving, vibrant cities need strong public transit, but they also need affordable housing that working families, seniors, and young people can afford.
The $2.8 million annually can be used to upgrade, replace, or modernize the city's transit infrastructure, but Councillor Kieran McKenzie said he doesn't believe the money can be used to revive the tunnel bus. That issue revolves around operational expenses. However, he says he expects Council to make the zoning amendments required to unlock the federal dollars.
This program I think is largely consistent with the housing solutions made for Windsor that Council has already endorsed. So I don't think we're going to see significant challenges on that front in terms of moving forward.
Outrage is growing in Europe over the latest tariff threat issued by U.S. President Donald Trump, a 200% import levy on wine, champagne, and other alcohol imported from the EU if it goes toward a planned tariff on American whiskey. That's the EU moving forward with that tariff. Anna Cunningham has the latest from London.
Europe sends close to $5 billion worth of wine each year to the US. Now, in France, there is pride in their heritage of producing wine and champagne. But this very suggestion from President Donald Trump that he is prepared to hit the EU with a 200% tariff has created anger and disbelief. The French Prime Minister François Bayrou says the US is threatening to obliterate the wine industry and that EU countries will not yield to the threats. President Trump says it would be in retaliation for the bloc's planned levies on American-made whiskey, which are themselves in retaliation for US tariffs on steel and aluminum. There is certainly deep concern in the European wine and liquor industry.
We really want to say to policymakers in the EU and in the US, enough is enough. We're done being used as bargaining chips. We want to get out of these unrelated disputes, and we really, really want to go back to tariff-free transatlantic trade in spirits.
President Trump has made his views on the EU clear.
I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you. And, we're going to win that. We're going to win that financial battle.
In France, we know that independent winemakers represent 60% of the country's wine production, but it's not just France that is angry about this. Spain, Italy and Portugal are all big wine exporters. The French Finance Minister, Éric Lombard, has labelled this escalating US-EU trade war as idiotic. He's planning to visit Washington soon, and he says he's hopeful negotiations with the US will be open. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
The Windsor International Film Festival is getting in on the action of this trade war. No tariff threats of their own. They're hosting screenings of some selected films they hope get people talking about the Canadian-American connection in some different ways. Here's Dalton Chen with a look at what's coming up.
Imagine if Canada-U.S. relations became so chaotic and adversarial that a Cold War developed between the two neighboring nations. Wouldn't that be an entertaining fiction? That's the premise of the 1995 comedy Canadian Bacon. Vincent Georgi of the Windsor International Film Festival chose it as part of an upcoming movie weekend that's all about Canada's relationship with the United States.
We firmly believe that film creates conversation. Our founder had always said the end of the film is the beginning of the conversation. So let's come together and see some films that are meaningful and show what that Canada-U.S. relationship is. This story of a U.S. president that decides to wage war on Canada, and how could that go? Michael Moore does a really good job of satirizing that relationship, and it's made the film oddly timely right now.
On March 28th and 29th at the Capitol Theatre, 5 films will be shown, each exploring the relationship in different ways. Along with Canadian Bacon, WIFF will screen the 2012 thriller Argo, Ben Affleck's portrayal of the 1979 CIA operation to rescue hostages in Iran by posing as a Canadian film crew. There are also 2 documentaries in the lineup. You Are Here, a come-from-away story, explains how the small community of Gander, Newfoundland provided shelter to 6,000 passengers when their planes were diverted because of the 9/11 attacks. It's the story that inspired the popular musical Come From Away.
We thought it was the most humane story, and the one we wanted to really show how people came together in a split second, and how an unbelievable story of Canadian compassion.
The best of the best, Jazz from Detroit, looks at the history of the city and its legacy of great jazz musicians.
Ultimately, the Canada-U.S. relationship, and specifically the Windsor-Detroit connection, especially culturally, is inextricable, and culture goes beyond borders.
Finally, there's the francophone drama Berger, which means shepherds in English. It's about a Montreal executive who abandons his workaday life to tend sheep in Provence.
The core message of that film, too, is about finding happiness, finding your bliss in a peaceful way. The world is a funky place right now. I think people are looking for something that is positive and looking for something that is compassionate, and also big picture, in all these cases, things that are also reminders of our Canadian pride.
Dalton Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Well, if you're looking for something a little positive, the Monarch butterfly lovers in our area could be seeing more of those little wings fluttering around here this year. The World Wildlife Fund says that monarchs' populations in Mexico, where they winter, has doubled what they were last year. Now, those numbers were the second lowest counts on record last year, but the increase is creating hope. We spoke to a monarch expert earlier about what that means for the population in southwestern Ontario.
It depends upon how they return into Texas, and the conditions in Texas aren't really outstanding right now. It's very, very dry in Texas, and the monarchs will need nectar as they come into Texas. And I don't know much about the flowering conditions in Texas right now, but they usually find enough nectar, and now they've got to find enough milkweeds to lay eggs on. And so it's a little too early to tell what's going to happen in Texas, because the butterflies are just getting there. They're about halfway into Texas, and the numbers are still small, and we still have monarchs coming through. But there are enough monarchs in the system to get the population back again, but whether they will be able to do so really depends on the conditions they encounter when they get into the U.S. It's always good to have enough monarchs to come back and recolonize the southern United States and produce enough offspring there so that we get the northern areas colonized starting in late April all the way up into mid-June. Those butterflies that are the offspring of the ones returning from Mexico migrate to those northern breeding areas, and that's where the bulk of the butterflies are produced that join the migration in the fall.
Take a little peek out there at the Ambassador Bridge on a beautiful day. It has been nice so far today, but Colette is warning about that storm. We'll have more on the forecast later in the show. Welcome back. At the end of the G7 Foreign Affairs meeting in Quebec, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio doubled down on his government's threat to annex Canada. Speaking on Canadian soil, he said Trump's position reflecting a disagreement with Canada's position. Kate McKenna has the details.
During his visit to Canada, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended suggestions from his president to annex Canada. He downplayed the threat to Canadian sovereignty by saying that it's a disagreement between two governments.
The president has made his argument as to why he thinks Canada would be better off joining the United States for economic purposes. There's a disagreement between the president's position and the position of the Canadian government. I don't think that's a mystery coming in, and it wasn't a topic of conversation because that's not what the summit was about.
But annexing Canada is more than a disagreement, according to Canada's foreign minister.
What I said to the secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate, period. There's no argument, there's no conversation about it, there's no need to talk about it. You're here, you respect us, you respect our sovereignty, you're in our country, you respect our people, period.
It's crazy. His point is crazy. That's it. We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, be part of the United States. America is not Canada.
Germany and the UK came out in support of Canadian sovereignty.
Your country stands together. Canada's unity inspires us. We Europeans, we Germans, and Canada are not only partners, we are close friends. And friends have each other's back, always.
I recognise that there has been anxiety here in Canada at this time. How could I not with Canadian family? But I'm absolutely clear that Canada will remain and continue to be a proud sovereign nation.
But the Italian foreign minister said standing up for Canada is not his job.
But for me, Canada will be Canada over the next years. There's not a problem between Italy and America, problem between Italy and Canada, but it's not my job.
Despite this, Melanie Joly says it was a good meeting, with foreign ministers unanimously agreeing to support a U.S.-brokered ceasefire proposal in Ukraine. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Lamel Bay, Quebec.
In Edmonton, nearly a dozen bronze memorial plaques are missing. They were sent home to families of fallen soldiers after the First World War and placed on grave sites at an Edmonton cemetery nearly a century ago. And now, as Emily Fitzpatrick tells us, 11 of the plaques have been stolen.
Empty spaces are all that's left on these graves.
By taking these memorial plaques away, these personal links to the past, we're losing some of our Canadian history, our Canadian heritage.
Regimental historian Joe MacDonald says nearly a dozen memorial plaques honoring fallen Edmonton soldiers have been stolen from family grave sites.
These memorial plaques, what they are, they're symbolizing a lost loved one, whether that be a father, a son, a husband, or a brother. And so these were sent home to families because it was impossible to actually return the human remains at the end of the war. It was either too expensive, or for many of the soldiers, they just went missing.
MacDonald says the plaques may be small, but they're the only link to lost loved ones, many of whom are still buried overseas.
For a century, that memorial plaque, which had once been there, was that connection the mother had to her son's gravesite, a gravesite she probably never saw. And so it's a shame that that had now been stolen. And once again, we just hope that someday it'll be returned.
Military collector Doug Stiles believes those responsible will attempt to sell them rather than melt them down.
I was approached at one of the local flea markets and someone tried to sell me them. As collectors, we always record information. So I had recorded the list of all the plaques in the cemeteries throughout Edmonton. And as soon as I saw the names, I thought I'd better check on it just before I bought them. And it turned out that they had come from Edmonton Cemetery.
Edmonton police are investigating the thefts, and both Stiles and MacDonald hope to see the plaques returned to their rightful places. Emily Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Edmonton.
And if you've got a story that you think we should cover, we want to hear from you. You can send us a text, 519-984-2051, or flip us an email, windsor@cbc.ca. We want your ideas. We want to know what you want to hear about, somebody you want to highlight who's doing stuff good, or something you want us to check out to make sure everything's going above standards there. Just send us an email, drop us a text, and we will follow up to see what it is you want us to look into. Well, Colette, it's been a wonderful week coming back here, chatting with you. You left us with some nice days, but yeah, that warning, eh? Tomorrow we're looking at rain.
Yeah, we've got changes coming, and we're just not going to be able to avoid this one in terms of what's moving into southwestern Ontario. But hey, let's take it step by step and move you through what's going to be happening here. Our current temperature at 16 degrees, 10 degrees for Chatham-Kent. Cooled down there with the lake breeze coming on in due to the direction of the winds. Yes, a little bit of cloud cover, but of course there's still been the bright skies. It didn't stop us from getting to that high of 20 degrees, and we'll be back there tomorrow, but it's just with very different conditions to deal with. Some active weather, by the way, into northern Ontario, even a severe thunderstorm warning there near the Sioux earlier today. Also active weather associated with the same system, but not for us here, but into the states. Tornadic activity, severe weather threat continues tonight and for parts of the Mississippi Valley into tomorrow as well. So this is a very potent system. We're looking at the special weather statement just for the amount of rain plus some breezy conditions. Those winds will really be kicking up tomorrow and at times perhaps exceeding even 60 kilometers an hour. Some of those gusts could be up to towards 70 plus 20 to 40 millimeters of rain before it's all over with, and with the ground still firm in many areas or frozen, it's hard for it to absorb. So that's why we can get into localized flooding. Overnight tonight, this is really towards tomorrow morning. Think after kind of 5 a.m. towards 7 a.m. A line of rain showers with some embedded thunderstorms in there. That moves through. We'll kind of get a break. So it's not going to be an all-day rain on Saturday, but there'll be more to come. And then Saturday night, we get this more widespread, another batch, and there'll be waves of this one. So that's Saturday night and then into Sunday. By Sunday afternoon, lighter stuff, but some cooler air close by. I'm not sure that we'll see any flurries into Windsor, but a little bit further north, Sarnia certainly have that possibility, and there could be the odd one flying. Just showing you the model projections here in terms of that amount of rainfall. I said kind of up towards 40 millimeters. It is possible locally. Otherwise, kind of putting us right around 25 to 30 millimeters. Temperatures tonight will stay on the mild side, that's for sure, holding into those double digits. And then tomorrow, 21 degrees, but with the winds and at times some of that wet weather. Still breezy into Sunday, and eventually we'll find that temperature kind of coming back down a little bit. But if you look into next week, I mean, St. Patrick's Day, a little bit cooler, but still a bit above seasonal, and then mild and sunny as we move through.
Not a bad pop back there, eh, Colette?
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, thanks for this. Enjoy your weekend, eh?
You too.
And
been nice having you.
Yeah, it's been nice to be here, buddy. It's been fun. I'm not back next week. Maybe Kat is. Can't tell you.